Lots of attention across the media today, understandably across the whole planet, I suppose, in the media, on that landmark report from the UN, which has said that humanity has less than 3 years to halt the rise of planet warming carbon emissions, less than a decade to slash them almost in half. I'm trying to remember the phrase used by the UN expert on this. He said we're on a fast track, I think it was, to climate disaster. Ciara, it's a pretty stark report.
Yeah, it is a stark report, and it does strike me that I suppose the narrative around it has changed. People have gotten much more real on all of this lately. I think the mind has been focused by several reports in a row on all this. But to be honest, and I know you and I don't agree on this. I kind of understand why we have treated climate somewhat differently to how we treated maybe COVID, the pandemic, Ukraine, things like that. I think human nature is such that you deal with today's problems today and tomorrow's problems tomorrow. And I think immediacy and the imminent disasters that were COVID and I know you might...
It is today's problem, though.
Yes, it is, and it isn't, though.
Well, let me give you one date. July 23rd, 2018. 1,000 people died in Japan, and the Japanese Met Office, their effectively their Met Office, has come out and said emphatically that would not have happened without global warming. So that's just one tiny example of how it is happening today. It's happening yesterday. It happened yesterday. Yeah,
and I think freak weather things do obviously kill people, and I'm not denying that they are linked to climate change and climate warnings, but Shane, it is the case that people long finger things. It is the case that everything is called a crisis nowadays. Housing crisis, health crisis, everything is called a crisis, and that becomes a hackneyed expression, so people don't think things as seriously as they should. And I do think that it is in our nature to long finger things until the last minute, and that is just a way of prioritising the important things to do with.
Because ultimately, as human beings, we are selfish, because it doesn't ultimately, at the moment, affect us.
I don't agree that we are selfish.
Oh, I think we're completely selfish. I think we're absolutely selfish. And that's why the reason we don't want to tackle climate change is the same reason why we don't want to actually cut off the gas from Russia, because it'll affect us. We do not want to make the kind of changes that are needed, even though those changes are coming down the track either way. We will not do it voluntarily. We will only do it when literally a gun is put to our head and we have to do it.
But is that not normal? I mean, the changes that you were talking about making are financially huge commitments, and also unpalatable to people insofar as that they have to give up things that they enjoy doing, perhaps like long haul travel, like lighting fires. You and I have often talked about things like that. There are lots of things in people's lives, like
but
eating
either we
meat.
do all those things, Ciara, or there isn't a planet for future generations. And if we don't do that, well, then we are selfish.
No, but you can understand why people are brought to that kicking and screaming, because they don't want to do it. But that doesn't mean that they're not going to do the right thing, and it doesn't mean that they're selfish.
I think it does mean we're selfish. I think it means actually we don't ultimately care unless it hits us. Unless it hits us smack in the nose, we don't care about it. That's the definition
should we care
of
about
selfishness.
Unless they hit us smack in the nose?
We're not just talking about how many things. This is the greatest challenge facing mankind since World War II, and arguably a greater challenge than World War II, and we are just blithely going on as if it isn't even happening and saying, actually we'll deal with it tomorrow. This report shows it is today's problem, and either we deal with it or we say to future generations, you know that time capsule that we talked about in the census. We may as well write in the time capsules, we couldn't give an FUCK.
I don't agree with you. I think you're absolutely overstating people's selfishness. There's a pragmatism to dealing with immediate problems at the time. It's like the way we've been talking about climate for a very long time, but when COVID came along, we had to deal with COVID ahead of climate. When the Ukraine came along, we had to deal with
people,
the Ukraine
millions of
ahead
people will
of
die
COVID.
from global warming, and global warming is here now. I've actually made up my mind. That's actually what I am going to write in that thing on the census. We don't care. We don't care about you. 100 years from now, what are people going to read? We didn't care about you.
I don't agree.